Sounds right. Sounds right.
Let's get started then. So I think we need to start this by introducing ourselves. My name is Derek. I am a teacher of design and with a lot of experience teaching business as well. Presently in Vietnam, having taught at a few international schools, started off in the UK. Over to the man.
Hello, I'm Gavin, and similar to Derek, I teach IB Business Management. I've also taught other curriculums such as IGCSE, and I'm also based in Vietnam.
And what we're going to do today is we're talking about the key expectations of students when a student is a new student. But Gavin, I've got a question for you. What exactly is a new student? How do we define that? Is that day one or what is it?
I think you can sort of move the boundaries around as much as you want to. Me personally, I would say, 4 weeks before, at least, before a student really gets comfortable with the new environment, the new voice, the content, and just a bit of a routine. So I'd say about 4 weeks is a rough time frame, but that's open for debate.
Interesting way of putting it is the new voice is what they get used to. Okay, let's stay with this idea of what a student is going to expect as a new person on the course. What's day one like?
For business, I think it's you don't want to. You've got to be careful not to overwhelm them with business.
Are we thinking this is day one at school, or are we thinking this is day one in the classroom?
I'm probably thinking day one in the classroom, because trying to think of what's going on at school is just kind of beyond certainly my comprehension. I don't know about yours. But I think just in a business classroom, it's as the teacher what's about to come their way, a new language essentially. So it's about just sort of introducing them to the subject, giving them a sort of rough idea of what they can expect, and then maybe just some sort of easy activity which gets them thinking about the idea of business, i.e. just buying and selling, for example.
Okay, and I mean, you and I both know how many peculiar acronyms, etc., the IB course has. How do you guide or open up the students to all of these acronyms like ATLs or phrases such as command terms? What's the inroad to that?
Well, I think again, it's difficult to look at it in isolation, because they should be picking up on that in other classes as well. However, starting with the sort of the basics, I think, is a good place to start, with the defines and things like that, and just maybe giving them some simple activities that.
So with define, you're talking about the command terms here.
Yeah, specifically.
And how do you bring in the formative assessments linked to the ATLs? I mean, at what point do the students realise that an ATL is an ATL? Or have they got some kind of prior experience before they come into your class?
I guess it depends where they're coming from. Some students might have more of a background with that, others may have no idea at all. And I think, again, it's without sort of scaring them and intimidating them. It's about just showing them in your own words, to begin with, them from your own experience, how to approach a question. Okay, Derek, so the question I've got for you is, how do you bring in the formatives and the ATLs, for those students that are advancing from the MYP program into the diploma program? How do you kind of make sure that they flow one into the other and merge smoothly?
Okay, I think, just in case the viewers don't know, Gavin and I have already worked together in the same school. And Gavin, I think you've already walked into my design room when we were working in that school together.
Yep.
And you saw that I had things like floppy hats lying around and
Yep.
things that the kids could touch and feel when they walked into the classroom.
Absolutely.
So what I like to do is to switch their minds onto my class and switch their minds off whatever they've been doing in the corridor, whatever they've been doing in the previous classroom, so that when I introduce my formative, they're no longer thinking about the previous class. And when I introduce them to an ATL, it's almost like I'm not telling them, guys, we're now going to do an ATL. I don't think I ever do that, or extremely rarely if I ever say the word ATL to the students. So what I'd like to do, for example, in business, I would have a collection of words, for example, on every table. So one word might be number one, #1. Another table would have a word of the latest version. Another table might have the word the best upgrade. And what I would get the kids to do when they're coming in is to have a think about which table actually has the best phrase here. Is it number one? Is it the best upgrade? Is it the best product ever? Which one is actually more important? So I'm not saying the word ATL, but I'm trying to switch their minds onto that little tiny phrase or that object that I might put onto their table, so I've got their interest, and then move on from there.
Okay, excellent.
But let's come back to the idea of, what we're talking about here, which is what to expect as a new student. So the new students, they've walked into the classroom, they're in a business class. Let's say we're still staying on day one, and as a human being, not as a student, but as a human being, aged, 16, 17, what is that human being going to expect in terms of this new social environment that they're in on the DP compared to the MYP? What's the difference for that human impact?
Again, I think the nature of business management, it's a new language again, so it's like it just feels more serious. It's not like maths where they're familiar with some of the terminology. It's a new language completely, and we're also asking them to apply this knowledge consistently to real world scenarios like case studies, which they've probably never had to do before.
They won't have done that. My students, they took a time getting used to the case studies.
Exactly. So sure. I just think you're kind of not chucking them in at the deep end, but it's like, okay, here's what you're learning. There's the real world. Let's see how you connect the two dots.
How do you take a student who hasn't got experience of case studies for business, and then you introduce them into this new world?
Good question. I think, again, what I always try and do is put myself in their position. And again, because we rely so heavily on case studies, if you were to just say to a student within the first week of business, go and find a case study and answer these questions related to a case study, they wouldn't even, how do they know what a case study is? How do they know if they've found a good example? So my approach usually would be to just take one from the course book, whichever one you're using. It's usually quite it contains minimal information, so it's not too difficult for them to get through, and then just get them practicing those basic command terms related to the material. So again, it'll be a define, and then usually it will jump into an explain. How about yourself? Any way to expand that?
I think we already had this chat in the past. I know there's a lot more than that you do. For example, you've got the kids talking about business leaders, which then becomes a case study.
Yeah.
For me, you've seen the wall in my classroom where I have the Panmure collection of businesses. So we can put that later at the bottom of this chat. So
good resource.
Can have a look at that. It is a good resource. So Panmure has approximately 40 or 30 different businesses that they look at from a variety of perspectives: marketing, HR, strategy, process, etc. So I use those as a source of multinational case studies. And then for the smaller business case studies, I use Kickstarter.
Okay, why Kickstarter?
Kickstarter is brilliant. You've got 40-odd thousand different businesses on there. The students can choose a business that matches their own passion. They can almost get lost in Kickstarter by looking at too many different things because it's all absolutely fascinating.
Yeah.
And then you can take the route of marketing in there. What evidence do we see of the business in Kickstarter using particular words, using video? What evidence do we see of the finance?
Yeah.
What evidence do we see of how they're linking their philosophy to the customer or the proposed customer? Kickstarter is fantastic.
I agree. We used it a few weeks ago actually for sources of finance, and again it was kind of like an introduction activity. But
Beautiful source of finance. Kickstarter itself, yeah.
And we were just getting them to look and say, okay, well, which one would you invest in if you had money? Which one would you invest in and why, basically? So it was they were coming up with some interesting choices as well. So I definitely recommend that to any teachers that are looking for some extra exciting case studies.
Yep. And if anyone just Googles anything, something like similar to Kickstarter, there's 100 different options.
Exactly.
So let's go back to this point of what to expect as a new student. I mean, the expectation is case studies.
Yeah.
They are being introduced to the Panmure collection. They're being introduced to the Kickstarter collection. They're being introduced to different perspectives of looking at a case study. It's confusing for a new guy on the course, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. As previously mentioned, they've never had to sort of apply their knowledge instantly to the real world like we force them to do, essentially. So again, any strategies that you can do to just ease them in and then give them sort of more autonomy with case studies that they choose is
interesting point. I mean, you and I were both working at international schools.
Yeah.
The parents, are people of means, shall we say. A lot of these parents have got their own businesses.
Yeah.
Do you bring that into the lesson?
As in, like, asking, how do you mean? Like
asking the kids, what's your mum and dad doing? What's family business?
Well, I mean, sometimes I do, and it's one of those, really. It's a bit of it depends. Sometimes they'll tell you, or say, my father or my mother has a business, and then that allows me to feel comfortable to ask, further questions.
It's a good point there. What to expect as a new student.
Yeah.
Feeling comfortable in the classroom. And like showing, what you and I both do, we try and get our students to actually just feel that comfortable zone.
Absolutely.
More than anything else, because if they get comfortable, they get open.
Absolutely. Because, what I try and stress to my students is, I show them the book and I say, guys, if you think that I sit down at home and remember every detail in every page of this book, you're mistaken. So therefore, I still have to revisit units myself and refresh my knowledge at times, because it's natural. Yeah. We have a million and one things.
What to expect as a new student? Expect your teacher to be studying in the background at the same time.
I think if we're honest, we all do a bit of that. So yeah, it's I just try to take my own experience and just pass that on to them and just say, look, we take one page at a time, one unit at a time. Don't try and get too ahead of yourself. There's always a much more simpler way of saying a business management term. So I usually just say, okay, basically what they're saying is this, and then it hits home. So it's just demystifying business terminology, because there's usually a much simpler way of saying what it's trying to say.
Yeah, you've got some background in MYP as well, although that's in your past now.
Yeah.
How do you talk differently? I mean, do you talk differently to DP students?
I think so. I mean, most of my teaching career has been grade 11 to 12 anyway. So, and in Vietnam, so you tend to see the same patterns amongst, teenagers of that age. So, obviously there's varying levels of English ability, which you have to try and cater for, because if they lack confidence in their English ability and they've got to spew out this new business terminology, it's almost like a crushing defeat. So you have to be mindful of that. However, that doesn't mean that I try and dumb myself down or dumb the language down, because that's not going to help them in the long run. So it's just a case of, again, just building confidence, I think. So saying, okay, I understand your situation. I understand you might lack confidence. I'm going to take that into account, support you where I can, but you've also got to realise that you've got to step up to what's expected.
One of the things that I love about the IB is the it's concept driven. And there are the QGIS concepts for business. That's you can't talk to the student as a kid anymore. You've got to talk to them as a young adult.
Yep.
Because otherwise the concepts become less than what they should be.
Yep.
Because they're difficult to get your head around. How do you introduce the conceptual teaching and learning approach to a new student?
Good point you make there, because if you're, like you say, they're young adults, and if you look at the different QGIS elements, issues related to ethics, they're not. They can be pretty ugly, right? So
how do you mean ugly?
Well, it depends. If you're looking at ethics in relation to things such as child labour, things like that, and just all kinds of areas. So I think like you say, the QGIS elements and treating these kids as young adults now is the lens which we use for them to look at the real world. So yes, there's a case study, but these QGIS factors give it focus. So for me personally, we'll start with just one of the factors. So you might say, you've got your case study. Can you identify any examples of change within that case? And then eventually we want to work them up towards obviously the more challenging and difficult QGIS essay questions, where you're asking them to consider two of the topics. But like I say, to ease them in, so I'll start with one of the QGIS factors and ask them to identify that within their case. How about you? Anything you could add to
Sure.
that?
Just for the benefit of the listeners, let's just define what QGIS is first.
Okay.
So you mentioned change.
Yep.
So the 6 elements of QGIS are, if I can get these correct, change,
Yep.
culture,
Yep.
ethics.
Globalization.
Globalization is the one I keep
Come on,
forgetting.
Derek.
Innovation and strategy.
Absolutely.
Innovation is the one that I've got a strong passion for.
Okay. Why is that?
Because I think, it's maybe my background, like I've had a couple of businesses I've succeeded and failed at.
Yeah.
I teach design.
Okay.
I'm aware of just how much innovation it needs to walk in a marriage with entrepreneurship skills.
Right. Okay.
They've got to be together.
Yeah. And I think I know they're changing this year, but I think all of the different elements are just so powerful to really make the content come alive.
Yeah, I think what you were kind of starting on before as well was each table within the classroom is going to have its own case study. You can then say, right, this table 1 you're looking at through the lens of change. Table 2 you're looking at the same case study through the lens of ethics.
Yep.
Table 3, 4, 5, etc. Not etc. You're going to get more than 5 tables in the classroom. But I think we've had 4 tables in the classroom. But each table, take your word of the lens, then, we're looking at the same case study, the same leader, the same problem of the case study through that lens. And those lenses at this moment is going to be the lens of the concept.
Yeah.
So the students, as a new student, they are getting used to these ideas of conceptual learning. I think in the MYP, it was the 10 learner profiles. That was the concept.
Right.
Balanced, or risk taker.
Yeah.
So the IB does kind of lead into from the MYP into the DP on conceptual kind of learning.
Yeah.
But the conceptual parts in MYP is more to do with character and personal growth.
Yeah.
But in DP, it's much more of a wider thinking.
Absolutely. And do you think, because obviously they're changing it this year. Did you think it needed changing or upgrading, or were you quite happy with the?
I'm very happy with the way it is.
Yeah. But
I'm not happy with the way the exam is going to be broken down into like 3 exams now.
Yeah, but we can get into that in later episodes, right?
Right.
But yeah, like I say, again, it's an important part of the course, and I think I found that the students generally don't enjoy it as much because I think they're not sure whether they're doing it right. But you know, you have to. They've got it coming.
Let's come back
there's a paper
to
coming.
the key knitting then. The key knitting here is what to expect as a new student.
Absolutely.
And there it's like they don't know what to expect. Boom, you've got it.
Yeah.
You've got it in one there. How do you, let's come back to the core of today, how do you draw them back into what to expect? Because it's a big picture.
Of course, I mean, then it goes just back to expect to be absolutely challenged, expect to have your mind opened, you know,
they've got to accept this.
Yeah.
They've got to accept that because this is any course on the DP is a mind bender.
Yep.
If they think they're getting an easy option by choosing one course over another course, that's not going to happen.
No, absolutely. And just, you know, the course content just changes. Like at the moment we're doing Unit 3 and all of a sudden that they've commented on how the course has just almost changed overnight. They say, whoa, it's like a maths course now. And it's like, well, buckle up because that's your next few months basically.
For
the finance stuff. But it just shows how dynamic the subject really is, and you know why it's popular. But it's again I think the question is what do they expect? Because we know in Asia at least parents find business management and economics popular choices. So what do they expect, you know, of the course? What's their expectations? And I think probably not the same as what they actually experience in the class. They just probably think that they're going to come out, you know, knowing about how to handle money and a few other things like that. But it's much more layered.
I mean, you know, in year 10, we give them that choices day.
Yeah.
But even in the choices day, where they get to choose the 6 courses they're going to do on the DP.
Yep.
They're coming in with a set of pre-ideas,
Yep.
how can I phrase this? But they think they know what business is going to be.
Absolutely. Making money, right? Making a profit.
Making money. And to be honest, a lot of these students think that business is the easy option. Guys, it's not. There is no easy option on the DP.
Yep.
In A levels, you'll be choosing probably between 2 to 4 A levels on your 2-year walkthrough. On the DP IB, you're choosing 6 subjects, 3 at a lower and 3 at a higher. It's a tough course.
Yep.
And they've got a full program.
Absolutely. So you need to, again, from my experience with the MYP kids looking to choose their options for next year, you know, the table was just busy. It was hectic all day. And, you know, I wish I had more time with each student and parent to explain exactly what to expect. I mean, yeah, you can skip through the pages of the book and say, you know, we do a bit of this, a bit of that. But I'd say, you know, if you're still not sure, ask to come and speak to the teacher.
How do we kind of tell the kids, require the kids, help the kids to understand what is in the book? I mean, is the book the be-all and end-all? I mean, we know it's not. But
No.
At what level do you kind of give expectations to the students of how to use the book?
Good question, because the book is not the be-all and end-all, but it is just it's a rough guideline of some of the things that we'll cover, and obviously the parents will be looking more at, you know, specifically the book, what's in there. The parents won't really understand what we mean by Cougis so much, whether they actually even care that deeply about that. You know, they're just okay. What do you do? Finance? Do you do, you know, HR? Do you do this and that? So I don't know. Personally, for me, I would say book an appointment with your teacher, with the business teacher, and see if you can have like a sit down and get a bit more knowledge out of them. Which is what I've actually done with it.
What I find in the early days, it's really difficult to get them to focus on the homework. So
Right.
I like to give them the workbook as homework and I tell them that this is the part of the workbook that fits into today's lesson.
Right.
But generally speaking, new students don't do homework. It's really difficult to get them into that rut.
Yeah.
Any advice?
For doing homework, I don't know. I guess it's like, how often do you do it? Is it every week? What's the frequency? Is it overkill?
Mm-hmm.
Is it required that they should have homework that time, or do you just kind of do it when it's consolidating whatever you've been doing, so a certain unit?
Yep. I think as every teacher, every subject, we all want the kids to live and breathe the subject.
Yeah.
But the fact is, they are doing the 6 subjects,
Of course.
and to live and breathe all 6 of them is quite a weight on their shoulders.
Absolutely, and that's, I think, it's probably not common or popular opinion, should I say, but I do try and consider that sometimes. I guess another way of doing it, rather than giving them something to do at home, is just using the Think IB quizzes and doing it in class together. And just...
Think IB, okay, let's introduce this one for the students then. What is Think IB?
It's a resource provided by, who provides it again? Is it Paul Wang?
Paul Wang is the guy that writes the Think IB
Business section.
business section, yeah.
It's an IB resource, right, for students and teachers, and it's again, if you're a new teacher to IB Business Management, I would strongly advise that you ask your school to get you set up on there, right, Derek?
Yeah, definitely. The students can all access a lot of documents on the Think IB website. Tons of exercises to do.
Yeah.
The teacher can set up
Quizzes,
yeah, exactly.
activities, and like
Yeah.
if I know you do the same as me sometimes, where we just you can set them a quiz and just get them to submit their final score to you, and it's not the most ideal way of assessing, but like it's
a very quick way of knowing did the students get what it was that I was
exactly,
teaching.
and you can see what questions they got wrong.
Yep.
And then you can get like an overall idea of where the class might be, areas they might be struggling in.
Yeah.
So it's really cool. And if you're new to teaching IB, there's just so much information on there. So if you forget about the structure of the different exams or whatever else, it's all laid out for you. So you definitely need to be on there. I don't know what you'd do if you wasn't, basically.
The segue I want to choose is relationships in the classroom.
Good question.
These kids that are coming in, they know they're no longer a student. They're a young adult learner now, and that comes with an extra social part to it. And that they're starting relationships in the classroom. That taking those relationships out of the classroom into extracurricular areas, shall we say? How do we manage? What's your approach to managing the boyfriend-girlfriend relationships that are building in the classroom? Because they're getting interested now as young people in that kind of area, and it does impact on the class.
Yeah. Again, teaching across all of the different curriculums I've taught, mainly grade 11 and 12. It's something that I've seen, and it can be destructive to, I think, the overall environment. Destructive, is that the right word? No, not destructive, but it can be toxic. Is toxic the right word?
Worse?
I don't know. None of them are good. But yeah, it's important to obviously identify it quickly and identify if it's causing either of them problems, and break it up. Basically, I think there's no room for that in the classroom. Certainly shouldn't be impacting what you do in the classroom. So I kind of have not zero tolerance, but certainly I'm not hard line with it. But I don't allow it to flourish. That's for sure. But then if you think about like not just the normal relationships that develop, it's again that they're at that age where teenagers, some of them are lacking in confidence for various reasons because they're just becoming young adults. They're intimidated by this new world they've been thrown into, and you see that some of them can isolate themselves away from others as well, or just be almost mute. And I think you know, it's important for us to encourage them and give them the confidence to break out of that shell that they've put themselves in, and make sure that they're interacting, because business, you're not running a business by yourself. You're going to need to interact with other people. So I think that the more they appreciate and understand that I'm not going to allow you to sit by yourself and just isolate yourself. You're going to have to get involved. You're going to have to communicate. And it's not just for those that are lacking confidence. It's for those that are full of confidence. Use that confidence to bring other people in. Show leadership. You know, so I encourage them. I'll sometimes have a quiet word with, you know, the more confident, capable students. And I say, do you mind bringing that person in and just supporting them with what they do? And you tend to see that they enjoy that sort of responsibility that you give to them.
Right, that's a massive part of what to expect of a new student on business.
Yeah.
Is you're going to expect to get up off your table and to step into a unsafe zone by talking to others in the classroom that you haven't maybe talked to previously.
Yep.
That you're going to, these students, new students, they need to expect that they will be doing some networking outside the classroom, because they've got their big projects coming later in the year, which will be the IA and the EE.
Yep.
For that, they're getting up, and they, especially for the IA, they are going to interview people.
Absolutely.
And interviewing skills are a very, very critical skill that they will need to develop over their lifetime.
Absolutely. There's just no shying away from communication within business, and even in the DP course. So again, be prepared, and I think any teacher, you know, would or should identify any issues related to you know, students not communicating or isolating themselves, and really, you know, nip that in the bud from early.
Right, let's just wrap this up now then. So overall, how would you, I mean, I would say to the students, you're coming into a very exciting subject.
Agreed.
You're coming into a subject that's got so many tangents from various angles.
Yep.
The ATLs, the
Yep.
conceptual way of learning, the case studies, the networking. So how would you wrap it up? How would you then draw everything together as a final expectation for your students?
Well, I would echo some of the things you've said there, and I also try to show them that, like, the skills that they learn in this subject, business management, is actually applicable to all areas of their life at different stages. Managing people, managing money, you know. So it's just it's a social skill almost. It's a social undertaking as far as I see it. You're learning how to deal with people, money, and the world. That's the way I see it.
You know, we've only got a short time here. For those people listening to this, guys, we do encourage you to give us your extra views as well about what people should be expecting as a new student, because there's obviously areas that we have not covered.
Yep.
Areas such as, what is the wider school doing as well, and how is the wider school making things easier for the students? What is the extra support given to the students? What is the extra materials and resources? All of those we do recognise are equally important, but we don't have time for that in this chat. Is there anything, Gavin, that you'd like to say before we finish?
Just, you know, any students or teachers that want us to cover any issues or topics, just let us know in the comments, and we can take a look at them and consider it for future episodes.
Brilliant.
But yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening, guys.
Bye-bye.
Sounds right. Sounds right.